The future, solid as bedrock, shimmered in Brenda's smile across the room. My hand, already reaching for the champagne flute, froze. A stranger, neat suit, clipboard resting on his knee, held my gaze. Earl Sutton. He raised a subtle brow, a silent summons that ripped a seam in the evening's perfect fabric. In that instant, my entire life felt like an open book for him to tear. "We need to talk," his unmoving lips seemed to say, "about her." The private dining room at the homestead smelled of prime rib and polished oak, a comforting scent that usually settled in my bones. Tonight, it felt like the air was too thick, the cheerful chatter of our families and friends too loud. I watched Brenda move among them, her red dress catching the low light, a vibrant splash against the muted Midwestern evening. Her laughter, bright and clear, reached me even across the room. Tomorrow she would be my wife. The thought, a low hum of contentment, had been with me for weeks, a steady promise of what was to come. My best man, Cody Miller, sat at a round table near the back, his usual quiet presence a familiar anchor. Maggie Davis, his girlfriend, leaned in to say something, and Cody offered a small, almost imperceptible smile. They were good people, steady and true, like the land we all lived on. Everything felt right, settled. Then I saw him, a man I didn't recognize, sitting alone at a small, unoccupied table by the fireplace. He held a clipboard, its metal clip glinting. He wasn't mingling, wasn't eating, just watching. His suit was dark, well-fitted, a city suit in a small-town steakhouse. He met my gaze, a level, unblinking stare, and a prickle of unease started low in my stomach. The hum of contentment faltered. I set down my half-empty glass of iced tea and moved through the room, excusing myself past my Aunt Carol, whose smile was fixed in place. Each step felt deliberate, pulling me away from the warmth of the celebration toward the cool, detached figure by the fire. He didn't look away as I approached. "Evening," when I said, trying for a casual tone that felt thin in my own ears. "Dale Hanson, the groom." I offered my hand. His grip was firm, surprisingly so, and lasted a beat longer than polite. His eyes were light, assessing. "Earl Sutton," he replied, his voice even, flat, like stone worn smooth by a river. "I'm here for you and Cody, but I need to talk to you first." The words landed heavy. My brow furrowed. "Cody?" I asked, looking back toward my friend, who was now laughing at something Maggie said. Cody was not a man who required outside intervention. "You've got an advantage on me, Earl. What's this about?" He didn't answer directly. Instead, he reached into the breast pocket of his suit jacket and pulled out a thick, sealed envelope. It was off-white, the kind used for official business, and had a slight, crinkly feel to it. He offered it to me. This letter explains most of it. My fingers felt numb as I took the envelope. The paper was cool against my skin. The flap was tucked in, not glued, and I pulled it open, my eyes scanning the contents quickly. It was a letter addressed to me in my father's familiar, slightly shaky handwriting. My father, who lived 2 states away, who was too frail to make it to the wedding. "Dale," it began. I kept reading, my breath catching somewhere in my throat. The words hit me like a physical blow, each one a sharp splinter. "Brenda cheated. Earl has the proof. You need to listen to him. Brenda cheated on you." The phrase spun in my head, a disbelieving echo. I reread the letter, the loop of Dad's D in the sharp slant of his T's. It was his hand. No mistake. But the message. It couldn't be right. "Brenda?" A cold, hard anger began to set in, pushing out the confusion, the hurt. "My father's wrong," I stated, my voice tight, barely above a whisper, even though the room was still loud around us. "He'd tell me himself if it were true. He would call." Earl simply watched me, his expression unreadable. He reached into his pocket again, producing a business card. It was thick, professional. "Mummy Inc., Earl Sutton, field representative." He held it out for me to take. I stared at the glossy card, then at him. What in hell is my ink? The good humor I'd carried through the evening felt like a distant memory, replaced by something dark and cold. Earl Sutton, steady as a stone wall, watched me. The noise of the dinner, the clink of silverware, the murmur of conversation, all seemed to fade, pushed back by the sudden, intense focus of his presence. He spoke, his voice low and deliberate, explaining Me Inc.'s mission. We advocate for male equality, Dale. We push back against perceived imbalances, against a system that often overlooks the male perspective, the male victim. He spoke of unfair divorce settlements, false accusations, a world where men were often on the defensive. My mind, however, was still a spinning top. The accusation against Brenda, the letter from my father, those words had wedged themselves in my skull, blocking out any room for broader arguments or societal critiques. What's that got to do with Brenda cheating on me? I cut him off, the question raw, my focus a pinpoint of dread. The details of Me Inc. felt like irrelevant noise, a distraction from the crushing weight that had just settled over me. Earl didn't flinch. He leaned in slightly, his voice dropping another notch. Her actions, Dale, might stem from that very societal sense of entitlement we're fighting against. The idea that women can act without consequence, that men will simply absorb the damage. He paused, letting the words hang in the air, cold and calculated. I felt close to melting down. My hands were starting to feel clammy, my jaw tight. The elegant room, the festive atmosphere, felt like a cruel joke. All right, I conceded, forcing myself to sound calmer than I felt. All right, but where's this proof of Brenda's adultery? My father's letter? It says you have proof, Earl nodded, a slow, understanding motion. He reached out, placing a firm, dry hand on my arm. His gaze was erect, unwavering. Remember your father's advice, Dale. Listen carefully. The subtle pressure of his hand, the gravity in his eyes, felt like a physical restraint, pulling me back from the edge of immediate, explosive anger. You're still young, Dale. You need a reliable man to navigate these waters. He pulled his hand back. Now, an immediate confrontation, he continued, his voice calm. You'd lose the chance for maximum revenge. A stronger message. You go in hot, she'll deny, she'll manipulate, she'll turn it on you, and you'll walk away with nothing but a broken heart and a story she'll twist to her advantage. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. My hands felt damp with sweat, even in the cool air of the room. I managed a curt nod. The thought of losing any advantage, of her twisting things, was a fresh wave of nausea. Earl seemed to read my agreement. He then retrieved a slim tablet from an inside pocket. He activated it with a quick swipe, the screen glowing softly in the dim light. He handed it over to me. The first video played. It was grainy, taken from a distance, but the face was unmistakable. Brenda. She was laughing, her head thrown back, a man I didn't recognize standing close beside her. They were outside a bar. No date stamp. I tried to dismiss it, a frantic voice in my head saying, old news, just a friend, before we were serious. Then the second video started. This one was clearer, closer. Brenda again, this time with Mark Jensen, an ex-boyfriend from college. They were sitting in a booth, his hand resting casually on her knee. The date flashed clearly at the bottom of the screen. 2 days after we'd become exclusive, a chill snaked through me, a cold, undeniable truth replacing the frantic denials. 3 more videos followed, each one a fresh blow. Brenda with different men. One was Jim Henderson, a guy from my old softball team. Another I recognized as a client from my firm, all during our engagement. Laughter, touches, secret glances. Each clip chipped away at the foundation I thought my life was built on, leaving me hollowed out. The final video began. My breath hitched. It was my apartment, my living room. The familiar beige couch, the framed print of the old covered bridge I'd bought at an art fair. And there on that couch was Brenda and Mitch Olson, my best man. Brenda's giggle, clear on the audio, cut through the quiet of the room, through the haze in my mind. No way, she whispered, her voice playful. I love Dale to bits, but I like you too. I'll find a way. Mitch's laugh, deep and confident, followed. I'd be crazy to give it all up. The tablet felt heavy in my hands, a lead weight. The world tilted. The bile rose, hot and bitter, in my throat. My stomach clenched, threatening to empty itself right there on the polished oak floor, amidst the festive tablecloths. The faces in the videos, Brenda's laugh, Mitch's casual betrayal, it all swirled into a sickening vortex. My hands trembled, the tablet still heavy in them. Earl Sutton, ever observant, didn't move an inch. He produced a small, clear bottle from another pocket, uncapped it, and waved it gently under my nose. The sharp, acrid scent of ammonia cleared my head just enough to stop the urge to vomit. Then he offered a small plastic bottle of water. "Drink this," he said, his voice flat, devoid of sympathy, yet somehow practical. Typical reaction. I took a shaky gulp, the cool liquid a small comfort against the heat in my chest. "Be glad you found out now, Dale," Earl continued, his words cutting through the haze. "Not 10 years from now, with kids in the picture, a mortgage, and half your life already sunk into a lie." The stark truth of it, delivered with such cold, brutal efficiency, anchored me slightly, pulling me back from the brink of total collapse. I swallowed hard, pushing down the last of the nausea. The room was still spinning, but the edges were becoming clearer. I could feel the tremor in my hands subside, replaced by a dull ache. "Okay," I managed, my voice raspy. "Now," Earl said, straightening his suit, "go get Cody. It's his turn to listen." My head snapped up. "Cody? What's this got to do with Cody?" I felt a flicker of defensive anger, a protective instinct for my friend. Earl held up a hand, a calm, dismissive gesture. "He's not facing the same problem, Dale, not directly, but he needs to hear some information. Information vital for his future. For your future, now that you're both in this situation." His gaze was steady, implying a connection I didn't yet understand. Still shaky, my legs feeling like lead, I pushed myself up. I scanned the room, locating Cody still at his table, talking animatedly with Maggie. The sight of their easy camaraderie, their innocent laughter, twisted something inside me. I walked towards them, each step heavy. "Cody," I said, my voice barely audible over the general din. I put a hand on his shoulder, his back to me. He turned, his smile still in place. "Hey man, what's up? Everything all right?" His eyes, though, saw something in my face and his smile faltered. I leaned in close, whispering the devastating news, the words feeling like shards of glass in my mouth. "Brenda, she cheated on me, with Mitch and others." Cody's eyes went wide, reflecting the bright lights of the room, then darkening with disbelief. "No way," he exclaimed a little too loudly, drawing a quick glance from Maggie. He looked from me to the direction of Brenda, who was still charming my Aunt Carol. I gave a curt shake of my head, steering him away from the table, away from the innocent mirth. "Yes way, come on, there's someone who needs to talk to you. He has proof. It's bad, Cody." I kept my voice low, urgent. "He's the one who gave me the videos. Brenda's been at it for months, even in my apartment." Cody resisted for a moment, his feet dragging. "No, man, Brenda, she wouldn't. You're getting married tomorrow." Like me, he struggled to believe it at first. The idea too monstrous, or too close to home. He'd known Brenda as long as I had, seen her as a part of our group. "Just come," I insisted, pulling him gently but firmly towards our quiet corner by the fireplace, where Earl stood, still as a statue. Earl greeted Cody with the same firm handshake he'd given me. He didn't bother with the long explanation of ME Inc. for Cody. He didn't even show him the videos. Instead, he pulled out 3 glossy photographs, printed from stills, and laid them on the small table. They were undeniable. Brenda, unmistakably, intimately, with 2 different men, neither of them me. The third photo showed her with Mitch. The angles, the expressions, left no room for interpretation. Cody stared at them, his face draining of color. His jaw went slack. He picked one up, his fingers tracing the outline of Brenda's face, the cheerful sound of the party, the bright red of Brenda's dress. All of it seemed to recede, leaving only the grim reality of the photos. He sat down heavily in the chair next to mine, a mirror image of my earlier shock. Both of us sat there silent and shell-shocked. Earl adjusted his clipboard, making a small, barely audible click, preparing to speak again. The air in our quiet corner, away from the laughter and the clinking glasses, crackled with a heavy shared grief, a profound sense of wrongness. The celebratory mood of the evening had vanished, replaced by a cold, hard dread. Earl, his voice low and steady, broke the silence. "This isn't just about you, Dale, or you, Cody. This is about a statement, a message." He outlined Mayface Inc.'s plan, not as a suggestion, but as a meticulously crafted strategy. He spoke of legal options, focusing on annulment, to make it as if the marriage had never happened, protecting me from any future claims Brenda might attempt. He talked about safeguarding me from the kind of false accusations that could ruin a man's reputation. Then came the part that made my blood run cold, yet simultaneously offered a perverse, grim satisfaction. Earl proposed a public, controlled revelation during the wedding ceremony itself to maximize impact. He painted a picture. The guests assembled, Brenda in her dress, and then the truth laid bare. The thought of it twisted my gut, but the image of Brenda's face, stripped of its deceit, mingled with the dread. The sheer depth of her lies, her casual cruelty, deserved to be exposed. Cody, next to me, had been quiet, observing my quiet agony. I could feel his gaze on me, then on the photos, a cold knot of loyalty for me, and a new unsettling suspicion about Maggie. His own relationship, which he'd always seen as rock solid, now seemed vulnerable. Earl handed me a single sheet of paper. It was a pre-written statement, concise and damning. It outlined Brenda's repeated infidelity, listing dates, and mentioning Mitch Olson by name. It was designed to be read aloud. The words were stark, leaving no room for doubt or denial. This plan, Earl continued, includes social and professional repercussions, not just for Brenda, but for Mitch Olson too. He's your best man. This kind of betrayal can't go unpunished, not if we want to send the right message. As he spoke, my phone buzzed. It was my father. Earl had apparently already briefed him, probably while I was reeling. I answered, my voice still shaky. Dad's voice was gravelly but firm. He offered his unwavering support, his words a balm on my raw nerves. Trust Earl, son, he urged. He knows what he's doing. This is for the best. His endorsement, even from afar, solidified something in me. Across the room, Maggie, sensing Cody's distant mood, tried to draw him out. I saw her touch his arm, say something with a worried expression. Cody just shook his head, withdrawn, still processing the immense shock. The chasm between their table and ours felt miles wide. I wrestled with the morality of such a public shaming. It felt brutal, almost medieval. But then the memory of Brenda's giggle on the video, Mitch's casual laugh, the image of them in my own apartment, crushed those qualms. The sheer depth of the betrayal, the callous disregard for me, for our life together, was a wound too deep to ignore. This ain't about cruelty, Dale, Earl said, as if reading my thoughts. His voice was firm, yet devoid of judgment. It's about truth. It's about stopping this from happening to others, about standing up for what's right. We meticulously reviewed the timing and logistics for tomorrow's ceremony. Every detail was ironed out. Who would hand me the statement when I would read it, the swift departure? It felt like planning a military operation, not a wedding. A cold, surgical precision that contrasted sharply with the emotional wreckage inside me. Cody, still mostly silent, stared at the photographs, his thoughts a closed book. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head, wondering how this would change his own relationship, a seed of doubt about Maggie taking root. He'd seen the casualness of betrayal, how easily it could hide. Finally, I looked at Earl. A cold, hard resolve settled in my gut. This was bigger than just my own heartache. It was a line in the sand. Okay, I said, the word coming out solid and clear. I'll do it. Earl nodded, a small, almost imperceptible gesture of approval. Good. Remember, Dale, Me Inc. is here for a reason. Your case, this public display, it sets a precedent. It's a crucial step for future protections. It shows them there are consequences. He packed up his tablet and clipboard, his task for now complete. The wedding morning dawned, a bright, clear Midwestern day, the kind that usually promised new beginnings. But for me, it felt unnervingly normal, a deceptive facade over the tectonic shift happening inside. I felt a numb detachment, as if watching a play unfold rather than living my own life. The crisp air, the scent of fresh-cut grass, none of it touched me. Cody was tense, I could tell. He offered quiet, unspoken support, a hand on my arm, a brief, shared glance. He carefully avoided any talk of his own future, of Maggie, as if afraid to break the fragile truce we'd formed with the day's grim reality. Brenda, on the other hand, radiated joy. I watched her from a distance as she greeted guests arriving at the small-town venue, a renovated old barn. Her laughter, oblivious and bright, echoed through the high-beamed ceiling. She caught my eye once, offering a dazzling smile, and I forced myself to return a tight-lipped version. My face was a carefully constructed mask. Mitch Olson, my supposed best man, fidgeted next to me at the altar. His eyes darted around, unable to meet my steady, unblinking gaze. He kept adjusting his tie, clearing his throat, a nervous energy thrumming off him. He knew. He had to. The knowledge of his complicity was another dull ache in my chest. The ceremony began, the music swelled, the congregation rose, and Brenda, in her white dress, began her walk down the aisle. She was beautiful, undeniable. Every step she took towards me felt like a betrayal in slow motion. Her father, proud and smiling, guided her. I stood at the altar, my hands clasped in front of me, my face still, a blank canvas of composure. The officiant, Reverend Miller, a kind, older man who had known me since I was a boy, began his familiar words, the preamble to the vows. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today. As he started, I raised a hand, a small, almost imperceptible gesture, but enough to stop him mid-sentence. His eyes, surprised, met mine. Stop, I said, my voice steady, but low enough that only the closest few could hear. Then I projected it slightly. Stop. There's something everyone here needs to hear. A stunned silence fell over the assembled guests. It was immediate, heavy, the kind you could almost taste. Brenda, only a few steps away from the altar, her radiant smile slowly faded, replaced by dawning confusion. Her brow furrowed. I pulled the pre-written statement from my jacket pocket. My hands didn't tremble. My voice, when I began to read, was steady, though devoid of any warmth. Brenda Cooper, I began, my gaze sweeping across the stunned faces, then landing on her. For months you have engaged in calculated infidelity with multiple men, even with the man standing beside me today, my supposed best man, Mitch Olson. As my words, cold and clinical, detailing Brenda's repeated betrayals, echoed in the suddenly silent hall, Earl's team made their move. They were discreet, almost invisible until this moment. Two men in dark suits, positioned near the back, activated a large screen that descended silently from the ceiling. Projectors flared, and there, for everyone to see, were the clips. Brenda, laughing with the man outside the bar. Brenda, with Mark Jensen. Brenda, with Jim Henderson. And then Brenda and Mitch in my apartment, her unmistakable giggle filling the now horrified silence. Gasps rippled through the stunned guests, a collective audible intake of breath. Brenda's face drained of all color, turning a sickly white beneath her veil. Her mouth opened and closed, soundless. Mitch, beside me, looked utterly shattered, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and humiliation. Brenda's parents in the front row stared at the screen, their faces contorted, first in disbelief, then in agonizing horror at the public spectacle. The brutal, undeniable proof. I concluded, my voice unwavering, resonating through the shocked silence. I cannot, in good conscience, marry someone who has so thoroughly betrayed my trust, our families, and the sanctity of what a marriage truly means. The officiant, aghast, stumbled forward. Mr. Hanson, I think we need to... He tried to restore order, but it was too late. The room erupted in a cacophony of whispers, gasps, outrage, and dawning understanding. Brenda, finally finding her voice, shrieked, "No, this isn't true, he's lying!" Her voice was raw, desperate, but the irrefutable images still playing on the large screen painted a damning, undeniable picture. Mitch, eyes wide, seeing his life collapsing, made a desperate move to leave, to escape the public condemnation. But Earl's silent associates, two other men in dark suits who had blended seamlessly into the crowd, subtly shifted, blocking his escape routes, pinning him in place. A deer caught in the headlights. Stick around to the end to see how life's costly choices unfold. The wedding hall was chaos. It was no longer a place of celebration, but a swirling vortex of hushed accusations, tearful confrontations, and frantic, bewildered questions. The projection screen still held the damning images, a silent testament to the wreckage. People were talking in urgent whispers, some pointing, some just staring with wide-eyed horror. Brenda, her white dress now a cruel mockery, was openly sobbing. She faced the furious, heartbroken gazes of her own parents, who looked like they'd aged 10 years in as many minutes. Her mother had her hand clamped over her mouth. Her father's face was a mask of disbelief and profound shame. Mitch Olson, still cornered by Earl's associates, endured the condemnation of shocked friends and family. Some of my own friends, guys I'd known since grade school, were approaching him, their faces a mix of anger and disgust. His professional life, his social standing, all of it was unraveling in real time. I stood for a moment, observing the destruction, feeling a strange mix of emptiness and grim satisfaction. It was over. The lie was dead. Earl, efficient as ever, placed a hand on my back, a subtle nudge. He led me quietly away from the wreckage, past the murmuring crowds, past the weeping Brenda, past the shattered Mitch. We walked out into the bright afternoon sun, leaving the echoes of outrage behind us. Cody, who had stood steadfastly by my side through the entire brutal revelation, was right behind us. As we moved, I could feel a cold dread emanating from him, a sense that his own reality, his relationship with Maggie, was now infected by the poison we'd just exposed. Outside, in a quiet corner of the parking lot, Earl had a sleek black car waiting. A man in a suit, a lawyer Earl introduced as Mr. Harrison, was already inside. They explained the specific legal actions Dale would be pursuing against Brenda: annulment, protection orders, reputation management. It was all laid out, cold and efficient, a clean severing. News of the disastrous wedding and Brenda's betrayal spread like wildfire through our tight-knit Midwestern community. By the time I was back in my apartment, my phone was buzzing with texts and calls, a mix of sympathy and shock. Brenda's social standing and reputation were irrevocably shattered. Mitch, I later heard, was already facing severe professional and social repercussions. His firm had strong moral clauses. Back in my quiet apartment, I felt a profound, echoing silence after the storm. The adrenaline had worn off, leaving a vast emptiness. The framed pictures of Brenda and me, which had adorned my living room, now felt like ghosts. I took them down, stacked them face down in a box. My father called again. His voice, softer now, offered words of comfort and pride. He assured me of my strength, of how I'd handled it with dignity. "You did the right thing, son," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "The hard thing, but the right thing." Later that evening, long after the last of the afternoon light had faded, Cody arrived. His face was etched with worry, lines I hadn't noticed before. He looked tired, older than his years. He didn't even bother with a greeting. "Dale," he began, his voice low, hesitant. I need to talk about Maggie." I was still grappling with my own pain, the hollowness inside me. But I looked at my best friend, saw the fear in his eyes, and knew I had to listen. I gestured to the couch. "Sit down, Cody." He sat, slumping, and confessed his growing, unsettling fears. "That night, the rehearsal dinner, after you showed me those photos, I couldn't stop thinking. And then a few days ago, I saw Maggie. She was talking to some guy from her office outside the grocery store. Too close, Dale. Laughing too much. Her hand on his arm, just like Brenda's in that picture with Jensen." A nascent seed of doubt was now blossoming into full-blown fear, nurtured by the brutal honesty of the day's events. The raw, public exposure of Brenda's lies had forced Cody to confront his own anxieties head-on, to see the signs he might have otherwise ignored or rationalized away. He looked at me, his eyes pleading for understanding, for guidance. I leaned back, a weary, knowing look on my face. The world, it seemed, was full of such hidden truths. "Seems we've got more in common than we ever wanted," I said, the words heavy with resignation and a bitter kinship. Cody confided his escalating suspicions about Maggie to me, his voice barely a whisper in my quiet living room. The specter of Brenda's betrayal, so fresh and brutal, now seemed to hang over his own life. He admitted to a growing coldness in his gut, a premonition he couldn't shake. "It's like that feeling you had, Dale," he said, his eyes haunted. "That something just ain't right." I listened, still raw from my own experience, but with a clarity born of pain. I advised Cody to act with caution, to gather proof, echoing Earl's counsel to me. Don't go in blind, Cody, I said. You need to know what you're up against, or you'll just get hurt worse. Cody, desperate for answers but hesitant to accuse Maggie directly, decided to discreetly observe her movements. He recalled Maggie's vague excuses for late nights, the sudden work emergencies that kept her out, her often evasive answers to his casual questions about her day. These were small things, easily dismissed before, but now they clustered together, forming a pattern that gnawed at him. I shared insights into ME Inc.'s investigative methods, the kind of detailed surveillance they conducted. You might need something similar, I suggested, knowing how hard it was to get undeniable proof on your own. Cody initially recoiled from the idea of hiring investigators. That feels too extreme, Dale, he mumbled, running a hand through his hair. Too invasive. This is Maggie. She's not Brenda. The resistance was clear, a desperate hope that she wasn't, but the seed of doubt had been planted, and it began to sprout. Cody started his subtle observations. He noted the mileage on Maggie's car when she left for work and when she returned. He discreetly checked her phone usage, the length of her calls, the times she was online. He picked up on small shifts in her routine, a new perfume, a sudden interest in going to the gym at odd hours, a slightly more distant gaze when he spoke of their future. Maggie, seemingly unaware of Cody's deepening suspicion, continued her life. She was still sweet, still affectionate, but a subtle tension began to stretch between them, a thread of unease that only Cody could feel. He tried to hide his scrutiny, to act normal, but the effort was exhausting. Cody's internal battle raged, his deep love for Maggie warring with the gut-wrenching fear of another betrayal, of facing the same kind of public humiliation and private pain I had just endured. He imagined himself in my shoes at an altar, stripped bare. He confided in me again a few days later, the tension in him almost palpable. He expressed his profound reluctance to confront Maggie without concrete, undeniable proof. If I just ask her, Dale, he explained, she'll deny it. She'll turn it around. I'll just look crazy. I reiterated the importance of self-preservation. It's not about being cruel, Cody, I said, repeating Earl's own words back to him. It's about protecting yourself, protecting your future, from further heartache, from potential complications down the line. Feeling a heavy sense of inevitability, Cody finally accepted it. He couldn't live with the doubt, and he couldn't get the proof on his own. He finally contacted Earl Sutton. Earl agreed to take Cody's case. His voice was calm, efficient, laying out the discreet methods ME Inc. would employ to investigate Maggie. No direct confrontations, no alarm bells. Just facts. We'll get you the truth, Cody, Earl promised, one way or another. The waiting period was an agony for Cody. It was a slow-burning farce, a constant torment of doubt, hope that he was wrong, and an increasing sense of impending doom. Every phone call, every late night, every evasive answer now felt like another twist of the knife. He was living in a quiet hell, waiting for the truth to shatter his world, just as mine had been shattered. Earl's team began their quiet, efficient surveillance of Maggie Davis. Their methods were discreet, thorough, almost invisible. Cody received periodic updates, each one a fresh twist of the knife in his already wounded heart. The waiting had been agony, but the small, coded reports of her movements, her meetings, were a new kind of torture. Initial reports were unremarkable. Maggie going to work, running errands, meeting friends for coffee. Cody clung to these, a flicker of hope. But soon, patterns emerged. Furtive meetings in parking lots, secretive phone calls taken in hushed tones, late returns home from working late or visiting a sick aunt. Each detail chipped away at his denials, hardening the cold knot in his stomach. Finally, the day came. Earl presented Cody with the indisputable photographic evidence. It wasn't a grainy video, but crisp, clear photos. Maggie intimately involved with a coworker, a man Cody had seen once or twice at company picnics, but never thought twice about. They were kissing in a park, holding hands in a dim restaurant booth. Cody stared at the pictures, the reality of Maggie's betrayal hitting him with a physical force. It wasn't the explosive rage I'd felt. For Cody, it was a hollow ache in his chest, a profound, desolate sadness. Unlike Brenda's string of seemingly casual encounters, Maggie's affair seemed to be a sustained, deeply hidden relationship, carefully orchestrated. The photos showed Maggie meeting her lover in quiet, out-of-the-way spots, places carefully chosen to avoid any chance of being seen by anyone they knew. She had been meticulous, calculating. The casualness of Brenda's actions had been a different kind of pain. Maggie's felt colder, more deliberate, a betrayal carved out over time. Earl offered Cody the same legal counsel and protective measures that I had received. Advice on how to end the relationship cleanly, how to protect his assets, and how to safeguard his reputation. Practical steps for a bitter, inevitable end. Cody, after much deliberation, decided against a public spectacle. "I don't want to do what you did, Dale," he told me, his voice rough. "Not with Maggie. I need to end it quietly." He preferred quiet dignity to the chaos of public exposure, the kind of brutal honesty I had chosen. It was a different kind of man, a different kind of pain. He spent hours preparing himself mentally, gathering his thoughts, rehearsing the words he would have to speak. He didn't want to yell, didn't want to rage. He just wanted to be done. I offered a quiet, solid presence. I didn't try to tell him what to do, just listened, understood the particular brand of pain Cody was now enduring. The silent understanding between us was deep, forged in the shared experience of betrayal. The confrontation took place at Cody's apartment on a somber, rain-streaked evening. The air was heavy with unspoken truths, the falling rain outside mirroring the tears that were soon to fall inside. Maggie arrived, sensing something was wrong. She looked at Cody's face, then saw the stack of photos on the coffee table. Her cheerful greeting died on her lips. Faced with the undeniable evidence, Maggie broke down completely. Her pleas were choked by tears and fear as she admitted her infidelity, her voice cracking as she tried to explain, to apologize, to mitigate. But Cody didn't listen to the words. He looked at her, his voice flat and devoid of emotion. "It's over, Maggie," he said, his words quiet but firm. "I can't do this anymore." The quiet finality of his words echoed in the small, suddenly empty room, leaving no room for argument, no hope for repair. Dale and Cody, bound by a shared painful experience, began the slow, arduous process of rebuilding their lives. The immediate storm had passed, leaving behind a landscape irrevocably changed. For me, the days that followed the wedding ceremony were a blur of paperwork and quiet legal consultations. Guided by Earl and his legal team at ME Inc., I pursued the annulment with a steady resolve, devoid of emotion. It wasn't about anger anymore, but about severing ties cleanly, protecting what remained. The legal actions against Brenda and Mitch were similarly handled, a series of cold, efficient steps. Brenda faced significant social and professional repercussions. The story of the wedding, brutal in public, had spread like wildfire. Her name, once associated with charm and vitality, was now whispered with pity and scorn. Her reputation in our small, tight-knit community was permanently tarnished. She tried to make amends, to explain, but the indelible images on that screen had spoken their own truth. Mitch Olson, too, felt the full weight of his choices. He lost his job at the local bank, the unwritten code of loyalty in a small town swiftly enforced. He struggled to find new employment. Everywhere he went, he was Mitch, the guy who, his betrayal, so public, had made him an outcast. Cody, meanwhile, took his own steps toward rebuilding. He moved out of the apartment he'd shared with Maggie, finding a quiet new place on the outskirts of town. It was smaller, emptier, but it was his. A fresh start, away from the ghost of shared deceit. He didn't want to carry the weight of her lies in his home. Maggie, living with the immediate consequences of her choices, wrestled with guilt. Her future, once intertwined with Cody's, was now irrevocably altered. She too faced the quiet judgment of neighbors, the unspoken questions in the grocery store aisle. There was no public spectacle for her, only the slow, grinding reality of a broken trust and a lonely path forward. Earl Sutton, true to his word, remained a resource. He would occasionally check in, a discreet email or a brief phone call. He didn't offer sympathy, but a quiet reminder of Me Inc.'s ongoing mission to protect others, to ensure men had a voice in these situations. He felt like a distant guardian, a silent testament to the necessity of vigilance. Both Cody and I focused on our careers. Work became an anchor, a place where purpose could still be found. We poured ourselves into our jobs, finding a quiet satisfaction in the tangible results, the solid progress. It was a way to ground ourselves, to rebuild an identity untainted by the recent wreckage. We drew strength from genuine friends and family who, after the initial shock, offered unwavering support, not pity. My father continued to be a pillar of support. His calls were less frequent now, but his quiet wisdom, his steady reassurance, helped me navigate the emotional recovery. He didn't preach, he just listened, offering strength forged from his own life's trials. He taught me the quiet endurance that was a hallmark of our family, of this land. We realized that while the betrayals had left deep, indelible scars, they had also forged a stronger bond between us, Cody and me, a bond of shared adversity, of hard-won understanding. It also gave us a clearer sense of self, a firmer grasp on what we would and would not tolerate. The initial raw desire for maximum revenge had evolved into something more profound, reclaiming our dignity, setting firm boundaries for the future, and refusing to be silent victims. Dale and Cody occasionally met for coffee at the local diner, the same one we'd gone to since high school. We'd share quiet conversations, not rehashing the past, but acknowledging it, cautiously looking toward new beginnings. There was no grand plan, no hurried jump into new relationships, just slow, deliberate steps forward. We learned to trust our instincts again, but with a newfound pragmatism, a hard-earned wisdom that now tempered our hope. The world wasn't as simple as we'd once thought, but it wasn't entirely bleak either. The town, in its own way, slowly moved on. Life continued, crops were planted, seasons changed, but the story of the disastrous wedding and its immediate aftermath remained a quiet, cautionary tale, woven into the fabric of local lore. It was a reminder that even in the quiet heartland, hidden lives and broken trust could erupt into public view. Dale and Cody, standing firm and resilient, became symbols of quiet strength in the face of deep, personal betrayal, embodying the enduring, stoic spirit of the Midwest. The dust settled slowly over the Midwestern town, but the scars remained, etched deep into the lives of Dale and Cody. Their journey through betrayal and public humiliation had been a crucible, stripping away innocence, but forging a hardened resolve. They found strength not in vengeance, but in the quiet reclamation of their dignity, setting boundaries that promised a future built on honesty. Life moved on, a testament to resilience, yet the lessons learned were carried forward with a hard-won wisdom. Their story became a silent, enduring cautionary tale, a reminder that the price of lies is always paid, often by more than just the deceiver.